Before Egypt raised its pyramids, before Greece dreamed of gods, there was Sumer, a land between two rivers where humanity first learned how to be civilized. Here, 5,000 years ago, people built the first cities on Earth: Uruk, Ur, Lagash, places so ancient their dust became our history. Streets buzzed with traders, priests, and builders. Clay tablets clicked beneath styluses, recording laws, poems, and dreams, the first writing system ever created. They invented the wheel, mapped the stars, brewed beer, and measured time itself in 60, the same 60 seconds ticking in every minute you live today. Their gods were fierce and human-like, full of desire and anger, and their stories would echo into the Bible, into Gilgamesh, into us. The Sumerians didn't just build temples and canals. They built the idea of civilization: law, language, order, cities, kings. Everything that came after, every empire, every invention, began with them. And then they vanished, swallowed by floods, wars, and time, leaving only broken tablets whispering that once, in the cradle of the world, humanity woke up.
In the burning cradle of the Nile, a civilization rose obsessed with one question: how to never die. The ancient Egyptians built their world around eternity. Every sunrise was rebirth, every sunset a journey to the underworld. To them, life was only the beginning, a test to earn immortality. They carved their prayers into stone so hard that even time surrendered. They filled tombs with gold, food, and spells to trick the afterlife. They wrapped their kings in linen and magic, believing the soul could be rebuilt cell by cell, a spiritual science long before medicine had a name. The pyramids weren't just tombs. They were cosmic launch pads, mathematical stairways for the pharaohs to climb into the stars. And for 4,000 years they ruled, mastering architecture, astronomy, and the art of forever. But when the sand swallowed their temples and empires fell, their secret still lingered in the dust. The death can be delayed by memory, and as long as we remember their names, the Egyptians never died.
Long before Rome, before Athens, before even the pyramids reached the sky, there was a place of peace. Along the Indus River, cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro rose from the dust, perfectly planned. Straight streets, brick houses, running water. No palaces, no armies, no warlords carved into stone. This civilization, 5,000 years old, built a world without kings, a society that ruled itself through balance, trade, and silent order. Their people bathed in the Great Bath, not to worship a god, but to cleanse the soul. Their merchants traded from Mesopotamia to the Persian Gulf. Their seals, tiny mysterious symbols, may hold the code to a lost language that no one on earth has yet broken. And then, silence. No invasion, no fire, just disappearance. The river shifted, the rain stopped, and an entire world faded away like a mirage. No swords, no monuments of conquest, only harmony, logic, and mystery. A civilization that proved humanity could thrive without war and without kings.
In the heart of the East, where rivers bend like dragons and mountains touch the clouds, rose a civilization that never stopped creating. For over 4,000 years, China built and rebuilt the world. They gave us paper, the compass, gunpowder, and silk, not as accidents, but as intentions, inventions born from patience and philosophy. While empires elsewhere rose and fell in fire, China endured by understanding balance. The yin and yang, harmony between chaos and order, woven into everything from medicine to music, from war to art. Their emperors ruled by the mandate of heaven, a divine contract that could be revoked if rulers lost virtue. And their thinkers, Lao Tzu, Confucius, Sun Tzu, didn't just shape China, they shaped how humanity thinks. From the Great Wall's endless spine to the terracotta army's silent gaze, the Chinese built monuments not only to defend their land, but to declare, "We are time itself." Dynasties came and went, but the idea never died. That civilization is not a moment, it's an eternal invention.
Before Zeus ruled Olympus, before Athens or Sparta drew their first breath, there was Crete, the island of light and mystery. Here, the Minoans built palaces that glowed with color, not war. No fortresses, no armies, just open halls, flowing art, and walls painted with life. They worshipped the bull, the snake, and the power of the sea. Their people leapt over bulls in ritual dances, half ceremony, half defiance of gravity, as if saying, "We are not afraid of chaos." In their labyrinthine palace of Knossos, myth and history blurred. The story of the Minotaur, of Daedalus and Icarus, all began here, in corridors where sunlight met shadow. Their ships ruled the Aegean, carrying olive oil, gold, and stories, until one day the sea they worshipped turned against them. A volcanic eruption, a tidal wave, maybe both, and the world's first maritime empire sank into legend. But echoes remain in Greek myths, in art, in our imagination. The Minoans proved that a civilization could rise not through conquest, but through beauty, balance, and the dance of life.
Before Homer sang of heroes, before Achilles raged or Troy burned, there were the Mycenaeans, the bronze-clad kings of ancient Greece. They ruled from fortress palaces, Mycenae, Tiryns, Pylos, stone citadels that looked carved by giants. Here, power wasn't whispered, it was hammered into gold masks, forged into spears, and sealed in tombs fit for gods. They were warriors, traders, and poets of war. They sailed across the Aegean in black ships, bringing both olive oil and death wherever they landed. Their legends became myths, of Agamemnon, the relentless king, of Helen, the woman whose beauty burned 1,000 ships, of Odysseus, the mind that outwitted fate itself. Archaeologists once thought Homer's world was fiction until they uncovered the ruins and found the golden face of a king who may have lived. Then, as suddenly as they rose, the Mycenaeans vanished. Their palaces fell silent, their language forgotten, their stories left to echo in epic poems. But through myth, they achieved what no army ever could. They conquered immortality.
In the land of marble and myth, humans dared to challenge the gods, and in doing so, became legends themselves. Ancient Greece wasn't just a civilization, it was the birth of the human spirit. Here, thought became power. Philosophers questioned everything from the stars above to the soul within. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, they shaped how the world thinks. Artists sculpted perfection from stone. Athletes raced not for survival, but for glory. And storytellers wove gods and mortals together. Zeus, Athena, Hercules, Achilles, myths that spoke not of fantasy, but of the human condition itself. In the chaos of city-states, Athens, Sparta, Corinth, freedom was born, democracy tested, and individuality discovered. While others built empires, Greece built ideas, the blueprint of science, drama, politics, and beauty that still defines us. They were mortal, flawed and proud, but in their art, their words, their courage, they reached beyond mortality. Because in Greece, to be human was not weakness, it was a divine experiment. And from that experiment came everything we call civilization.
Across the scorching plains of Iran rose an empire so vast that it stretched from the Nile to the Himalayas. This was Persia, the first superpower of the ancient world. Founded by Cyrus the Great, a conqueror unlike any other, it didn't just rule through fear, it ruled through respect. When Cyrus conquered, he didn't burn, he built. He freed slaves, honored gods of other lands, and created an empire where every culture could breathe. From Persepolis, the city of kings, Persian engineers carved a miracle of order and speed, a road network spanning thousands of miles, where royal messengers could race across continents, their motto eternal: neither snow nor rain nor darkness shall stop us. Gold flowed through their veins, art through their hands, and tolerance through their laws. Even their enemies, the Greeks, could not help but admire the precision and power of the Persians. And though time would shatter their empire, their vision survived. The idea that conquest is not destruction, but the architecture of civilization.
Before Rome ruled the sea, before Greece dreamed of gods, the Phoenicians had already conquered the waves. They were not warriors of land, but masters of the ocean, sailing slender, purple ships that glided across the Mediterranean like whispers of commerce and curiosity. Their home, Tyre, Sidon, Byblos, small city-states, bound not by empire, but by ambition. They gave the world a secret weapon greater than any army: the alphabet. 22 simple symbols that could capture every thought, every name, every dream, the foundation of all written languages that followed. They traded glass, cedar, silver, and the color of kings, royal purple dye, made from sea snails, so rare that it was worth more than gold. Their ships reached beyond the horizon, to Africa, Spain, perhaps even Britain, leaving behind ports, myths, and mystery. They didn't build monuments or armies, they built connection between cultures, ideas, and worlds. And though the sea eventually swallowed their cities, their alphabet survived. Every word you read, every story you write, is a quiet echo of the Phoenicians, the people who taught humanity to speak forever.
Before Greece rose, before Egypt reached its golden peak, there was a hidden empire that ruled in silence: the Hittites, the forgotten superpower of the Bronze Age. High in the mountains of Anatolia, they forged a kingdom of iron and order. Their warriors rode chariots faster than thunder. Their kings spoke with the voices of gods, and their scribes carved treaties and laws that would echo for millennia. They were the first to master iron, turning the earth itself into a weapon. They clashed with Egypt at Kadesh, in the greatest chariot battle the world had ever seen. And when the dust settled, they made history's first peace treaty. The Hittites didn't just fight, they diplomatized, they negotiated, they engineered. Their cities were labyrinths of stone, their archives filled with thousands of clay tablets, records of love, war, and daily life. And then they vanished. No one knows why. Their empire collapsed into whispers, their language lost to time, until archaeologists uncovered their ruins and realized that behind the myths of Egypt and Babylon stood another titan of history. The Hittites, a civilization that proved power can fade, but never truly disappear.
Long before Rome marched across Europe, the Celts ruled by spirit, by steel, and by story. They were not one empire, but a storm of tribes, stretching from Ireland to the edges of Asia Minor. They fought like wildfire, fierce, free, unstoppable. And when they went to war, they painted their bodies blue and screamed the names of their gods into battle. But they were more than warriors. They were dreamers, blacksmiths, poets, and mystics who believed every tree, river, and stone had a soul. Their druids were keepers of secrets. Priests, judges, and scientists rolled into one. They spoke to the unseen and wove nature, myth, and wisdom into every ritual. The Celts left no great palaces, no written histories, only symbols carved in stone and stories whispered by bards around eternal fires. Rome feared them, then absorbed them. Christianity tried to bury them, but the Celtic spirit never died. It just changed form. It lives in our legends, in Arthur, in Avalon, in the haunting music that still drifts through the mist. The Celts, the people who taught the world that magic and courage are sometimes the same thing.
Before the Maya counted the stars, before the Aztecs built their temples to the sun, there were the Olmecs, the first great civilization of the Americas. They rose from the jungles of ancient Mexico, where rivers ran thick and the air hummed with secrets. No empire before them had carved stone so large or dreams so deep. The Olmecs built cities of earth and clay, and at their heart stood giant heads of stone, faces of forgotten kings or perhaps gods, each one weighing more than a car, carved with precision no one can fully explain. They worshipped the jaguar, the creature that moved between worlds, a symbol of power, shadow, and transformation. They studied the heavens, tracked the seasons, and maybe, just maybe, invented writing itself in the New World. Their legacy spread like roots through time, feeding every civilization that followed. The Maya, the Aztecs, the Toltecs, all children of the Olmec idea. And then they vanished into the jungle, leaving only stone faces staring into eternity.
Deep in the jungles of Central America, a civilization rose that could read the stars like books and measure eternity in numbers. These were the Maya, the mathematicians of the cosmos, the architects of time. They built cities that seemed to grow from the earth itself. Tikal, Palenque, Chichen Itza, stone pyramids piercing through canopies of green. To them, the sky was a calendar, and every planet's movement was a message from the gods. They discovered the concept of zero long before Europe dreamed of it, and created calendars so precise they could predict eclipses thousands of years ahead. To the Maya, time wasn't a straight line. It was a circle,
and endless rhythm of birth, death, and rebirth. They wrote their history in glyphs, spoke to their gods through blood and fire, and saw no line between the physical and the divine. And though their cities fell silent, their time never ended, because their understanding of the universe still beats inside modern science, astronomy, and art. The Maya didn't just measure time, they became it, the timekeepers of the universe.
In the heart of a high mountain valley, where lakes shimmered like mirrors to the sky, the Aztecs built an empire that believed blood was the price of creation. They rose from wandering tribes to masters of the world, founding Tenochtitlan, a floating city of temples, canals, and color, a jewel of civilization shining atop a lake. To the Aztecs, life itself was a debt owed to the gods. The sun demanded nourishment, and so they offered the most precious thing they had, themselves. Rituals of sacrifice weren't cruelty to them. They were fuel for the universe, a sacred duty to keep the stars alive. They were astronomers, engineers, poets, and warriors, building gardens that floated, calendars that ruled the heavens, and armies that marched with divine purpose. But when the strangers came, steel, horses, and fire, the Aztec sun began to set. Yet even in their fall, they became eternal. Because the Aztecs understood something most civilizations forget, that creation and destruction are twins, and sometimes, to keep the world alive, you must feed the gods.
High above the clouds, where the air thins and the earth meets heaven, the Incas built an empire that touched the sky. They didn't need wheels or writing, only stone, will, and vision. From the peaks of the Andes, they carved cities that defied nature itself. Machu Picchu, a city floating in the mist, built so perfectly that not even a blade of grass fits between its stones. They ruled an empire stitched together by roads longer than Rome's, crossing mountains, rivers, and deserts, a network so vast it united a world of 10 million souls. Their messengers ran across cliffs with the speed of wind, carrying messages made not of words, but of knotted cords, the kupu, a language of threads and rhythm. The Incas worshipped the sun, the giver of life, and shaped their world in perfect harmony with the land. Terraces rising like steps to the heavens, temples glowing with gold as bright as dawn. And when the conquerors came, they could destroy the empire, but never its spirit. Because the Incas proved that humanity's greatest temples are not built on the ground, but in the sky itself.
In the endless silence of the desert, where life itself should have been impossible, the Nabateans carved eternity into stone. Hidden among rose-colored cliffs of southern Jordan, they built Petra, a city that glows like fire when the sun touches it. Temples, tombs, and palaces, not built, but sculpted directly into the mountains, as if the earth itself wanted to become art. The Nabateans were masters of the impossible. They tamed the desert with secret water channels and underground cisterns, turning barren land into a thriving kingdom. Caravans from Arabia, India, and Rome passed through their gates, laden with incense, silk, and gold, and Petra became the beating heart of ancient trade. But the Nabateans were more than merchants. They were architects of illusion.
Their city was designed to impress, to protect, and to endure. When invaders came, the desert itself became their ally, hiding their world in silence and stone. Centuries later, Petra was rediscovered, its facades glowing again beneath the desert sun. A city half dream, half miracle, and a reminder that even in the harshest places, human genius can carve paradise from rock.
In a land of deserts and prophets, where empires clashed and gods were countless, one small people dared to believe in only one. This was ancient Israel, a civilization not built on gold or conquest, but on faith, law, and the Word. While others worshipped pantheons of gods, the Israelites heard a single voice, invisible, eternal, absolute. From that belief came a revolution, the idea that morality came not from kings, but from something far higher. Their prophets didn't build monuments, they built principles, justice, mercy, covenant. Their stories of Exodus, of David and Goliath, of exile and return, were not myths of power, but lessons of endurance. Jerusalem became their heart, the temple their link between heaven and earth. And though empires conquered them, Babylon, Persia, Rome, their faith survived every fall. From these hills of dust and promise emerged an idea that would reshape all of humanity, that there is one God and that the human soul is sacred. Ancient Israel, small in power, but infinite in influence, the civilization that taught the world to believe.
In the cradle of Mesopotamia, where rivers met and empires were born, the Babylonians looked not to the earth, but to the stars. They built towers that touched the heavens, ziggurats, stepping stones between mortals and gods. From their rooftops, they watched the night, turning the movement of planets into prophecy. To them, the sky was not chaos, it was a language written in light. Every eclipse, every rising star was a message to decode, a whisper from the divine. They created the first star charts, divided time into hours, minutes, and seconds, and mapped the heavens with a precision that would guide humanity for millennia. But they were more than scientists. They were dreamers. Their myths of creation, of flood and fire, would echo into the Bible, into legend, into the collective memory of humankind. In Babylon, magic and mathematics were the same. Priests were astronomers, and astronomers were poets. They believed the universe could be understood if only you looked long enough into the dark. The Babylonians, the first to read the stars, and the first to realize that the universe was speaking to us.
They called themselves the Sons of Ashur, and the world learned to whisper their name in terror. From the wind-swept plains of Mesopotamia rose the Assyrians, the first true military superpower, forged in iron, fire, and ruthless precision. Their armies moved like storms, disciplined, unstoppable, wrapped in armor of bronze and steel. Siege engines thundered against city walls, and their enemies fell not just by the sword, but by the sheer weight of fear. They built vast capitals, Nineveh, Ashur, Nimrud, where winged bulls guarded golden palaces and walls gleamed with carvings of conquest. Every stone shouted the same message: the strong rule, the weak obey.
But behind the cruelty was brilliance. They invented libraries, recorded histories, and crafted one of the first postal systems, because an empire of fear still needs order. Yet even iron rusts. Rebellion, fire, and vengeance consumed their cities, and their empire crumbled into dust. Still, their legacy endures. A reminder that power built on terror can conquer nations, but never time. The Assyrians, the empire of iron and fear, whose shadow still darkens the pages of history. Before Rome's eagles soared, before Latin ruled the world, there was a people cloaked in mystery, the Etruscans. They lived in the hills of Italy, masters of metal, art, and prophecy. While others fought for power, the Etruscans built a world of beauty, cities connected by sacred roads, temples that reached for the gods, and tombs that whispered secrets of the afterlife. They taught the Romans how to build, how to rule, and even how to worship. The Roman alphabet, the arch, the purple robes of kings, all born from Etruscan hands. But who were they, truly? Their language still resists translation. Their origins vanish in the mists of time. They read the future in lightning and animal livers, believing the heavens spoke directly to them. Then, as Rome rose, their light dimmed. Their cities were absorbed, their names forgotten, but their spirit lived on, hidden inside the empire that replaced them. The Etruscans, the shadow civilization, the unseen architects of Rome, and the silent voices beneath its marble throne.
They began as shepherds on 7 hills and became masters of the world. This was Rome, the empire that rose from nothing and refused to die for 2,000 years. They built roads straighter than destiny, aqueducts that carried life itself, and laws that still shape our world. Their legions, iron and discipline, marched across continents, turning wilderness into empire and chaos into order. But Rome was more than power. It was an idea. The idea that civilization could be forged through will, that greatness was not born, it was built. In their arenas, men fought for glory. In their forums, words shaped nations. And in their temples, gods watched an empire that believed itself eternal. Yet, as always, eternity had a price. Greed, corruption, and fire tore Rome apart, but it did not truly fall. Its spirit passed into the church, the law, the language, into every city, every empire that came after. Rome never ended, it merely changed its face. The empire that began with a wolf's sons still beats in the heart of our world. Rome, the empire that refused to die.
Across the blue horizon of the Mediterranean, there was a city that dared to rival Rome, Carthage. Born from the seafaring Phoenicians, Carthage rose from desert sands to rule the waves. Her ships carried gold, silver, and secrets from every corner of the known world. She was a city of merchants and mariners, of temples gilded in sunlight and harbors alive with sails and steel. But to Rome, Carthage was more than an enemy. She was a reflection. Another empire, proud, powerful, and destined to rule. And the world was not big enough for two. Then came Hannibal, the man who defied the impossible, crossing the Alps with elephants and vengeance. For years he made Rome tremble, his name a shadow that haunted the Republic. But even brilliance can bleed.
Rome struck back, and Carthage burned for 17 days and nights, its ashes scattered, its name cursed to oblivion. Yet the memory endured, because Carthage was more than Rome's rival. She was Rome's dark mirror, showing what the empire could become if greed and pride ever consumed its soul. The sea still whispers her name, Carthage, the city that fought the greatest power on earth and nearly won.
Before empires had borders, before kings built walls, there were the Scythians, the ghost riders of the endless steppe. They lived where the horizon never ended, a sea of grass stretching beyond imagination. No cities, no palaces, only horses, bows, and the sky. They were born in the saddle. Their children learned to ride before they could walk. They drank fermented mare's milk, forged weapons of gold and bone, and vanished into the wind before any army could find them. When the Persians came with legions of men, the Scythians did not fight. They disappeared. They burned their fields, poisoned their wells, and watched the invaders starve in the silence. They were not conquerors, they were forces of nature. Their art gleamed with gold, shaped into beasts and gods of fire and fang. Their graves were hidden beneath the earth, filled with treasures and warriors sleeping beside their horses. To the world, they were barbarians, but to history, they were the first to master freedom, rulers of a kingdom made not of stone, but of sky and motion. The Scythians, nomads who ruled the steppe, and whose thunder still echoes across the winds of time. From the wind-swept plains of Central Asia, a shadow rode like a storm, the Huns. No walls could stop them, no empire could hold them back. They came with bows that sang death, horses that raced like lightning, and a fury that made Rome tremble. At the forefront rode Attila, the scourge of God, a man whose name was a curse whispered across Europe. Villages burned, cities fell. Yet the Huns were more than destruction. They were survival, speed, and strategy incarnate. They had no stone palaces, no written histories, yet their influence reshaped continents. Empires fell not just to their arrows, but to the terror they inspired. A force so unpredictable, it seemed nature itself had turned against mankind. And then, like a storm, they vanished. Some say famine, others intrigue, others the weight of time. But the world they touched never forgot them. The Huns, the tempest that rode across history, reminding us that sometimes the greatest power is freedom unleashed, ruthless, swift, and unstoppable.
From the icy fjords of Scandinavia, a people emerged who would etch their name across the world: the Vikings. They were warriors, yes, but also explorers, traders, and dreamers. Long ships sliced through waves like arrows, carrying raiders to distant lands and merchants to shores of silk, silver, and spice. They believed in fate, in gods of thunder and chaos, Odin, Thor, and Freya, and in the glory of honor and adventure. Every raid, every journey was both a test and a story to be sung by skalds around fire. But the Vikings did not only take, they built. Settlements in Iceland, Greenland, and even North America showed their restless curiosity. They mapped the unknown, bridged oceans, and planted seeds of culture far from home. And when swords were sheathed, their tales became legend. Their blood ran into the veins of nations. Their myths shaped art, literature, and courage.
The Vikings, not just raiders of the north, but the restless heartbeat of exploration, forever chasing horizons and the edge of the world.
When the Western Roman Empire crumbled into dust, a new light rose in the east, Byzantium. Centered in Constantinople, a city of gold, domes, and walls, the Byzantines preserved the knowledge, art, and law of Rome. Here, scholars copied manuscripts, architects built wonders, and warriors held the gates against endless invaders. They were guardians of a bridge between Europe and Asia, past and future, faith and power. Their emperors ruled with divine authority. Their mosaics glimmered like fire in the darkness, and their navy ruled the seas with Greek fire, a weapon that burned like lightning on water. The Byzantines faced Goths, Persians, Arabs, and Turks, yet survived centuries longer than anyone imagined. In their courts, diplomacy was an art, and survival was a science. And when empires fell around them, Byzantium still glowed, a beacon of culture, law, and faith in a world descending into chaos. The Byzantines, the civilization that refused to vanish, illuminating the Dark Ages with eternal light.
From the endless steppes of Central Asia, a storm rose on horseback. The Mongols. They were nomads, hunters, and warriors, born to ride and to strike with unmatched speed. Led by Genghis Khan, they forged the largest land empire in history, stretching from the Pacific Ocean to the heart of Europe. Their arrows rained like thunder, their cavalry moved like wind, and their enemies fell before them as if the earth itself had turned against them. But the Mongols were more than destruction. They connected continents, opened trade across the Silk Road, and carried knowledge, culture, and technology faster than any empire before. They believed in loyalty, strategy, and fearlessness. Their code was simple: strength and order, and those who followed it ruled the world. And when their empires fractured, their legacy remained, a reminder that a civilization forged on the back of horses can change the destiny of the planet. The Mongols, riders of wind and empire, whose thunder still echoes across history. In the heart of Southeast Asia, where rivers carve the land and forests whisper secrets, the Khmer Empire rose, a civilization that turned stone into the stars themselves. They built Angkor, a city so vast that it could be seen from the heavens. Temples rose like mountains, canals shimmered like veins of light, and every stone pulsed with devotion to gods and kings. The Khmer were engineers, artists, and dreamers. They tamed rivers, controlled floods, and carved entire cosmologies into temple walls, depicting legends, gods, and the dance of the universe. Their capital was not just a city, it was a galaxy of stone, a testament to ambition, faith, and vision. Yet even the greatest empires face time. Angkor eventually fell silent, swallowed by jungle and moss, its roads cracked, its canals dried, but its beauty endured, echoing through centuries as a monument to human genius. The Khmer Empire, builders of a stone galaxy, whose temples still remind the world that humanity can carve the heavens on earth.
In the misty mountains and cherry blossom valleys of Japan, a class of warriors rose who lived by a code stronger than steel: the samurai. They were swordsmen, poets, and shadows. Every strike of their blade carried not just skill, but honor, loyalty, and the weight of centuries. They trained under the rising sun, perfecting art, strategy, and discipline, believing that life and death were part of the same path. The samurai served shoguns and clans, fought epic battles on fields of blood, yet also practiced meditation and calligraphy, because strength without wisdom was meaningless. Their armor gleamed like a second skin, their katanas whispered through the air, and their presence commanded respect, a living balance of fear and reverence. Though the age of swords eventually ended, their spirit never died. Bushido, the way of the warrior, still flows in art, film, and culture, a shadow of honor across the centuries. The samurai, guardians of tradition, warriors of destiny, and living proof that true power lives in discipline, courage, and shadow.
Between mountains, rivers, and the restless seas, a civilization quietly flourished, the Korean kingdoms. From Goguryeo in the north to Bokje and Silla in the south, they carved a world of art, war, and innovation. Stone fortresses rose atop cliffs, temples shimmered with color, and golden crowns told stories of kings who ruled with wisdom and strength. The Koreans were engineers, artists, and warriors. They mastered metallurgy, ceramics, and printing, centuries ahead of the world. Their scholars recorded history, philosophy, and science, while their armies defended the peninsula against giants like China and Japan. Silla united the kingdoms, creating the first Korean empire, a jewel of culture, strategy, and diplomacy. And when the Goryeo dynasty rose, they brought celadon, movable type, and traditions that still shine today. Though often hidden by larger neighbors, the Korean kingdoms shaped East Asia quietly, brilliantly, a civilization ahead of its time, yet timeless. The Korean kingdoms, the hidden jewel of the East, whose brilliance still glimmers through centuries of history. Across the endless blue of the Pacific, a people rose who could read the ocean like a book, the Polynesians. They had no maps, no compasses, yet they sailed thousands of miles between islands, guided by the stars, the winds, the waves, and the flight of birds. Every journey was a daring gamble, every landing a triumph of courage and knowledge. They built double-hulled canoes that cut through storms like knives, and their cultures thrived on islands scattered like jewels across the ocean. They planted crops, crafted art, and built societies on remote lands where survival itself seemed impossible. The Polynesians didn't just travel, they connected the world, bridging thousands of miles of ocean and leaving a legacy of exploration and resilience unmatched in human history. Their songs, chants, and stories still echo across the waves, reminding us that civilization can rise not from mountains or rivers, but from the boundless courage to explore the unknown. The Polynesians, navigators of the infinite ocean, whose horizons knew no limits, and whose spirit still rides the wind. In the rolling hills and plains of southern Africa, a kingdom rose that would echo across the continent, the Zulu Kingdom. Led by the legendary Shaka Zulu, they transformed warriors into a disciplined, unstoppable force. With short, stabbing spears, cowhide shields, and unbreakable formations, the Zulu fought with precision, courage, and strategy that left empires trembling. But they were more than warriors. Shaka forged a nation from clans, united people through loyalty, law, and vision. They sang their stories, danced their battles, and crafted a culture of honor and resilience. The Zulu clashed with Europeans, rival tribes, and fate itself. Yet their spirit endured, their legacy written in every hill, every song, every scar on the land. The Zulu Kingdom, a civilization of courage, unity, and strategy, who shook Africa and proved that a people united by vision can challenge the world.
In the heart of West Africa, where the Niger River flows like liquid gold, rose a civilization of wealth, wisdom, and wonder, the Mali Empire. Under the reign of Mansa Musa, gold didn't just fill the land, it defined it. He traveled to Mecca with caravans so vast that the world still remembers the king who showered cities in gold, changing economies and leaving legends in his wake. But Mali was more than riches. It was a center of knowledge, art, and faith. Timbuktu, the jewel of the desert, became a beacon of learning, its libraries overflowing with manuscripts of science, astronomy, and philosophy. The Mali Empire thrived on trade. Salt, ivory, and ideas flowed like rivers, connecting Africa to the world. Its people built cities, mosques, and universities that outshone distant lands in sophistication and vision. Even centuries later, Mali's legacy endures. A civilization that proved wealth is not just measured in gold, but in knowledge, faith, and vision. The Mali Empire, the Golden Empire of Mansa Musa, where the sands of the Sahara held treasures that could illuminate the world. Deep in the rolling hills of southern Africa, a city rose from stone, built not with mortar, but with sheer vision and will. This was Great Zimbabwe. Its towering walls and majestic enclosures speak of kings whose names are lost to time, and of a civilization that mastered trade, craftsmanship, and power. Gold, ivory, and exotic goods flowed through its gates, connecting the city to distant lands across the Indian Ocean. Yet its greatest marvel was not wealth, it was the architecture itself. Walls curved and spiraled, towers rose like monuments to the human spirit, all built with stones perfectly stacked, standing for centuries without a single nail. The people of Great Zimbabwe left no written record, yet their story is carved into every stone, echoing through centuries of mystery and wonder. And though the city fell silent, its legacy endures, a testament that civilization can rise from vision, even when kings vanish into shadow. Great Zimbabwe, the stone city of unknown kings, where walls whisper the secrets of Africa's forgotten past.
Long before ships crossed oceans and empires clashed, the Americas were alive with civilizations that breathed with the land itself. From the cliff dwellers of the Southwest to the mound builders of the Mississippi, to the towering cities of the Aztecs and Maya, Native Americans shaped their world with stone, earth, and spirit. They aligned their cities with the sun, the moon, and the stars, understood the cycles of rivers and seasons, and built societies where the sacred and the practical were one. Their art, their stories, and their rituals were not just decoration, they were maps of the cosmos, lessons of life, and bridges to the unseen. Every hill, every river, every sacred site was a testament to their deep connection with the earth. They hunted, farmed, traded, and celebrated,
leaving legacies etched into the land long before Europeans arrived. The Native American civilizations, architects of spirit and earth, whose wisdom whisper through forests, plains, and mountains, reminding us that civilization is more than walls and wealth. It is harmony with life itself.
In the frozen edges of the world, where the sun barely rises in winter and the ice stretches to the horizon, a people thrived against all odds, the Inuit. They did not conquer the land, they became one with it. Hunting seals, whales, and caribou, traveling by dog sled and kayak, they learned to read wind, snow, and ice like an open book. Their homes, the igloos, rose from snow like miracles, insulating life in a world of relentless cold. Their clothing, crafted from seal and caribou, was armor against death itself. The Inuit were more than survivors. They were innovators, storytellers, and navigators. Every star guided them, every current informed them. Every lesson passed from parent to child was a secret of endurance, wisdom, and respect for nature. They lived in a world where a single mistake could mean death, and yet they flourished for centuries, their spirit unbroken, their knowledge unmatched. The Inuit, masters of ice, survival, and human ingenuity, teaching us that civilization is not always built from stone, but from adaptation and courage.
From the deserts and mountains of ancient Iran, a civilization rose that would shine across millennia, the Persians. The Achaemenids built an empire that stretched from the Indus to the Aegean, uniting cultures, roads, and rivers under one banner. They ruled with wisdom and organization, inventing systems of governance, communication, and tolerance, and creating the first empire where diverse peoples could coexist. Then came the Sasanians, masters of art, architecture, and war. They forged a Persian identity that would endure for centuries, building palaces of marble and gold, and defending their lands against Romans, Byzantines, and Nomads. Persia was more than conquest. It was a civilization of ideas, religion, and culture. Zoroastrian fire burned as a symbol of purity, literature thrived, and art soared to unimaginable heights. Through rise and fall, invasion and rebellion, Persia endured, its flame never extinguished. From Cyrus to Khosrow, from empire to empire, the heart of Persia beat with eternal pride and brilliance. The Achaemenids to the Sasanians, Persia's eternal flame, a civilization that refused to be forgotten, illuminating the world with its vision, culture, and power.
From the forests and rivers of northern Europe, a people emerged who were called barbarians by Rome, the Goths. Yet they were more than raiders. They were warriors, settlers, and rulers, forging kingdoms from the ashes of a fallen empire. The Visigoths sacked Rome, but also built cities and laws that endured for centuries. The Ostrogoths ruled Italy, blending Roman legacy with their own fierce identity. They mastered both sword and statecraft, learning diplomacy, building cities, and governing diverse peoples. Their leaders became kings, their tribes became nations, and the so-called barbarians reshaped the map of Europe forever. The Gothic kingdoms were a bridge from the ancient world of Rome to the medieval kingdoms of Europe. They proved that civilization is not just built by empires, but by those bold enough to seize destiny from chaos. The Goths, barbarians who became kings, warriors who became architects of history,
and a civilization that changed the course of Europe forever.
After Rome fell, Europe was fractured, its glory buried in ruins and legends. From this shattered world rose a dream, the Holy Roman Empire. Charlemagne, crowned emperor, sought to revive Rome's greatness, uniting kingdoms, churches, and peoples under one vision. From Aachen to Vienna, cathedrals rose like fingers reaching for the heavens, and knights swore loyalty not just to kings, but to an idea: empire, faith, and order. The Holy Roman Empire was not a single nation. It was a mosaic of princes, bishops, and cities, a fragile tapestry of politics and ambition, yet it endured for centuries, shaping law, culture, and Europe's destiny. It was a civilization of dreamers and schemers, of battlefields and courts, of faith and power intertwined. Though imperfect, fractured, and often contested, its heartbeat was Rome, eternal, aspirational, unstoppable. The Holy Roman Empire, the dream of rebuilding Rome, a civilization that reached for eternity and left its mark on all of Europe.
From the hills of Anatolia, a dynasty rose that would stretch from Europe to Arabia, from the deserts of Africa to the gates of Vienna, the Ottoman Empire. They were soldiers, sailors, and statesmen, masters of strategy, trade, and diplomacy. Istanbul, their jewel of a capital, bridged continents and cultures, its mosques and palaces shimmering like dreams carved in stone. The Ottomans commanded the seas, controlled the Silk Road, and held the heart of the Middle East for centuries. They embraced diversity, bringing together Christians, Jews, and Muslims under one banner, while projecting power that even Europe could not ignore. Yet they were more than conquest and glory. They were patrons of art, architecture, and science, leaving legacies of knowledge, beauty, and law that still echo across the world today. The Ottoman Empire, the last empire of the Old World, a civilization of grandeur, endurance, and vision, whose shadow shaped continents and whose story is still alive in stone, water, and fire.
In the heart of India, a dynasty rose that would paint the land with marble, gold, and poetry: the Mughals. From Babur to Shah Jahan, they built an empire of wealth, culture, and grandeur. Gardens bloomed like paradise, palaces soared like dreams, and the Taj Mahal rose as a monument to love that defied time itself. The Mughals were conquerors, yes, but also patrons of art, music, and literature. They united a land of countless peoples, fusing Persian elegance with Indian tradition, creating a civilization of dazzling beauty and sophistication. Trade flourished, cities thrived, and knowledge flowed in every courtyard and library. Their legacy was not just power, it was harmony, vision, and timeless artistry. The Mughal Empire, the jewel of India's golden age, a civilization where ambition, beauty, and culture shone brighter than the sun over the Ganges.
In the lush jungles and winding rivers of Southeast Asia, two civilizations rose that would leave echoes of stone, gold, and faith: the Khmer Empire and Srivijaya. The Khmer carved temples that touched the heavens: Angkor Wat, Angkor Thom, cities of stone aligned with the stars, canals that tamed rivers, and walls that spoke of devotion and power. Far to the south, across oceans and straits, the Srivijaya Empire ruled the seas, a maritime power They controlled trade between India and China, guiding spices, gold, and culture along the waves, and spreading Buddhism across islands and shores. Both empires were architects of vision and endurance. One built on land, crafting a galaxy of stone. The other built on water, shaping a kingdom that flowed like the tide. They preserved knowledge, worshiped the divine, and connected people, trade, and ideas across centuries. Though lost to time and jungle, their legacies remain in temples, inscriptions, and stories, reminding the world that Southeast Asia once hosted civilizations of brilliance, ambition, and wonder. The Khmer and Srivijaya empires, lost kingdoms of Southeast Asia, whose stone and sea still whisper the glory of the past.
Across the vast waters of the Pacific, a people journeyed further than most could imagine: the Maori. They came from distant lands, navigating by stars, waves, and winds, and arrived in Aotearoa, the land we now call New Zealand. Here they became warriors, farmers, and artists, crafting a civilization that thrived at the edge of the world. The Maori were master navigators, and their canoes cut through oceans like arrows, bringing people, culture, and life to remote islands. Their villages were fortified. Their tattoos and carvings told stories of ancestry and power, and their rituals connected them to the land, the sea, and the spirits. They were fierce in battle, yet wise in governance, law, and kinship. Every chant, every carving, every haka was a living link to the past, a testament to resilience, courage, and identity. The Maori, warriors who sailed to the edge of the world, whose legacy endures in every wave, every mountain, and every heart that beats in Aotearoa.
Long before cities, kings, or empires, humans left traces of their imagination and soul in stone and bone. The Magdalenian and Azilian cultures were the first artists of humanity, painting, carving, and creating in the shadow of the Ice Age. In caves like Lascaux and Altamira, they painted beasts that roamed the land, capturing the power, grace, and spirit of animals they hunted. Their hands left stencils on walls, and their tools carved symbols we still struggle to understand. The Magdalenian people hunted mammoths and reindeer, crafted intricate jewelry, and created tools of astonishing skill. The Azilian, coming later, lived in a warming world, continuing the tradition of art, symbolism, and ritual. These were humans before civilization, yet they were already philosophers, storytellers, and dreamers, turning survival into expression, and the harsh world around them into a canvas of life and spirit. The Azilian and Magdalenian cultures, art before civilization, reminding us that creativity is as old as humanity itself, and that even in darkness, humans sought to leave a mark of light.
Before empires spanned continents, civilization began in the land between rivers, Mesopotamia. After Sumer rose its successors, Akkad, Ur, and Lagash, each a beacon of ambition, power, and human ingenuity. Akkad, under Sargon, created one of the first empires, uniting city-states under a single crown, spreading law, language, and governance across the land. Ur, the city of kings, shone with ziggurats reaching the heavens, its streets alive with commerce, culture, and devotion. Here, the royal tombs whispered of wealth, ritual, and eternity. Lagash, smaller yet fierce, defended its people with walls, armies, and clever administration, showing that even modest cities could shape history. Together,
These successors refined writing, law, and mathematics, built canals to tame rivers, and temples that honored gods and men alike. They proved that civilization was not a single city, but a network of ambition, innovation, and vision. The Mesopotamian successors, Akkad, Ur, and Lagash, civilizations that rose from dust and river, laying the foundation for all human empires to come.
In the heart of Italy, where canals gleamed under the sun and marble kissed the sky, a spark ignited that would illuminate the world: the Renaissance city-states. Florence, Venice, and Milan were not mere cities. They were laboratories of genius. Merchants became patrons, artists became visionaries, and philosophers questioned everything, turning curiosity into revolution. The streets echoed with the footsteps of Michelangelo, Leonardo, and Galileo, whose minds dared to touch the divine. Palaces shimmered with frescoes, libraries overflowed with knowledge, and the world seemed to expand with every discovery. These city-states were battlegrounds of politics, power, and pride, yet they nurtured creativity that reshaped humanity. They proved that civilization can rise not just through conquest, but through imagination, learning, and daring vision. The Renaissance city-states, when knowledge was reborn, and humanity first glimpsed the brilliance it could achieve when curiosity met freedom. In the smokestacks and iron veins of Europe, a new era awoke, the Industrial Age. The hum of machines replaced the rhythm of hands, steam engines roared like beasts, and cities grew faster than the mind could follow. Factories rose like fortresses of progress, and railways stitched continents together, shrinking the world while expanding ambition. Humans became inventors, visionaries, and laborers, discovering that power could be harnessed from coal, steel, and fire. Electricity began to illuminate nights. Telegraphs carried words across oceans, and the modern age began to take shape. Yet progress came at a price. Smoke choked the skies, cities swelled with the restless, and the world learned that technology is a tool, not a master. The Industrial Age, the moment humanity turned to machines, forever changing the rhythm of life and setting the stage for the empires, nations, and revolutions that would define the modern world. Across the oceans, beyond the horizon, humanity dared to chase the unknown. The age of exploration had begun. Sailors braved storms, uncharted waters, and monsters of myth, carving paths where none had gone before. Columbus, Magellan, Zheng He, names that echo as explorers who turned the world into a single, spinning map. New lands were discovered. Treasures and spices flowed into distant ports, and civilizations collided in fire, trade, and wonder. Maps became more than lines on parchment. They became stories, dreams, and possibilities. But exploration was not just conquest. It was curiosity, courage, and the human desire to understand the world, to measure it, name it, and connect it. The age of exploration, when maps became myths and the edge of the known world was only the beginning of imagination.
From the coasts of Europe to the farthest corners of the globe, two powers carved maps, seas, and histories in their image: Britain and France, architects of the modern world. Their fleets ruled oceans, their cannons demanded obedience, and their merchants carried goods, ideas, and influence across continents. They built cities, railways, and ports, and left a legacy of language, law, and culture that survives today. But empire was not just conquest, it was ambition and vision, blending innovation with strategy, commerce with diplomacy, and glory with exploitation. From the colonies of India to the streets of Paris, from African coasts to Caribbean islands, the world became their canvas, painted in shades of ambition, struggle, and connection. The modern empires, Britain, France, and the world they drew, civilizations that reshaped the globe and whose echoes are still felt in every corner of history.
The story of civilization does not end with empires, kings, or machines. It continues now in a world built of code, networks, and infinite connections, the digital civilization. Our cities pulse with electricity, our voices travel through fiber and air, and our minds are linked across continents in an invisible web. Information is power. Ideas move faster than armies, and innovation spreads like fire across the globe. We are building empires without walls, trading not just goods, but knowledge, art, and influence. Algorithms govern markets, satellites watch oceans, and digital currencies redraw the maps of wealth and ambition. Yet this empire is fragile. Its borders are virtual, its power is invisible, and its survival depends on wisdom, ethics, and imagination. Civilization has always been a story of risk, courage, and vision, and today, the next chapter is being written in data, innovation, and human connection. The digital civilization, the empire we are building now, a world where the mind, the network, and the imagination become the greatest forces in human history.